Hello and welcome to this tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at the Emergence inventory service. We're going to be looking at how to access a user's inventory in code and how to access it in the overlay, as well as how to use dynamic metadata and how to use the NFT picker. So let's start with why you'd want to use the inventory service. One of the benefits the inventory service has is that it allows you to find every NFT that a user owns. So whether that be an ERC721 or an ERC1155, you can find everything. The benefits of this are it's the easiest way to find all of the things. It's effectively a blockchain indexer, which we talk about in our introduction to blockchain and Web3 stuff. It's a database which is filled with all of the data from the blockchain. To know the contents of the blockchain, you would have to read the entire blockchain through from start to finish. Our service effectively does that for you, sticks it in a database and gives you quick access to it. So the inventory service provides a node called Inventory by Owner. This node allows you to enter an address and find all of the NFTs associated with that address. One of the ways you can make use of this is as simple as generating a NFT-based in-game inventory for your player. We provide in the overlay an inventory which also makes use of this service for players to be able to look at their collection, much like how you can on OpenSea. Now you're probably wondering, how do we categorize NFTs? Well, we do this by leveraging our dynamic metadata system. The dynamic metadata system, what we were trying to do was effectively solve the problem of existing collections not having particular metadata associated with them. Ideally, every NFT collection would start out with some sort of attribute which would tell us what type of category it should be associated with in an inventory. However, obviously that's not the case, and for the majority of these collections they can't be updated. Therefore, we came up with this idea of dynamic metadata to allow developers to associate extra data with the NFT for their game. The current implementation of it is very basic and is more designed to give you an idea of what it will become, more so than an actually super practical example of it. Although this current implementation allows anyone to read and write to the same piece of data, and you can imagine how that could potentially cause issues, expect that we are going to make this a bit more usable in various different ways, whether that be everybody writes to their own piece of data but can read everyone else's, or there's permissions or some other system that allows this to be more useful. We'd like to imagine that eventually you could use this system to save actually useful information about NFTs, and you could effectively treat this as your own game's database about NFTs. You can start to think of smart contracts which may wish had extra features. You can now write the sort of data which you would write if they had those features. For example, say you've got a load of game objects which have the ability to set the colour on them, and then you have some profile pictures which are kind of a bit older ERC721s which don't have this additional functionality. You can now save the colour data into the dynamic metadata rather than, I don't know, recreate all of the ERC721s and burn all the old ones and convert their contracts over and all of that. Just makes life a lot simpler for you. We also have the NFT picker. In short, the NFT picker is the Windows open file dialog of NFTs, if you can think of it like that. The NFT picker is useful if you are building a metaverse experience where you don't really feel like building out an entire inventory system just for this one thing. What it does is allows you to tell the overlay to open to the user's collection screen and wait for the user to select a NFT. You can apply a number of filters to these, such as the name, the blockchain, and the category. And when they select one, you'll get a return on the node, which you can then process in your game. This is kind of like a game on Steam, opening up the Steam overlay and looking at the user's Steam inventory. This is the Web3 equivalent of that. Additionally, an example of this can be found in the Emergence sample project. We have a separate video on the Emergence sample project, which you'll find in a card now or in the video description. You can find the sample project on our releases section at github.com/Crucible Networks Ltd/Emergence SDK Unreal. Go to our releases section and then go to unrealsampleproject.zip and download it. As I said, everything I explained today is available in the sample project, but today I'm going to be walking you through it as a step-by-step process explaining how the system works so that you can adapt it to your needs. let's get started with a basic example for the inventory service. So we're back in the example project, which I've been working on in the past few tutorials. We're going back to doing stuff in third-person character because it's the most convenient place for me to show you stuff. I've already created a key press, which I'm going to use to activate the code here, so drag off of pressed, search inventory, and here we've got inventory by owner. So this takes a wallet address, and we're just going to use the currently signed in Emergence address, which you can get from typing Emergence service and get Emergence service, and then from there we can do get address, get cached address, plug that into address, and then from there, when this completes, what we want to do is a for each loop, and we're just going to loop over everything in the inventory. So just drag off of inventory, press break, we're going to break it into the items, then for each item we can break the item into its component pieces. So here we've got the blockchain, which is which blockchain it's on, the contract, which is the contract address, the token ID, and the metadata, which is probably the thing you're going to be looking for. And in this example, we're just going to look for all the names of things in my wallet. So drag off of loop body, type print, and drag off of name, and plug that in. Now when we press compile, press save, go to the game, we'll need to sign in with Wallet Connect because I chose to, instead of hard coding my address, I plugged it in via the Emergence service. So I'm just going to log in with Wallet Connect on my phone, sign in, press escape, and then press N, and you'll see it gets all the names of things in my wallet. And you can also see if I open the overlay and I click collection, you'll see all of those items here. So now let's go into a little bit more of a complex example. So let's imagine a scenario. You want to create a game, but you don't really feel like creating your own in-game inventory. You'd rather just use our overlays inventory for looking at and selecting items. Well, luckily we've got this great feature for you called the NFT picker. The way this works is if you imagine the Windows open file dialog, it's effectively that. So whenever you need to get the user to select one of their NFTs, you can just call a particular method and it will open the overlay and give you an event when the user has selected an NFT. So let's see how we can implement that. So let's go back to first person character, and we're just going to delete all the stuff we've done here. We don't need this anymore. Just going to reuse the N event. So let's search NFT picker, which will do open NFT picker. You need to plug in a player controller. As we're in a single player game, we're not going to worry about getting the actual player controller properly. I'm just going to assume that it's the 0th player controller at all times. So we're going to do get player controller, player index 0. So here we can make a emergence inventory filter set, and this determines what the filters will be set to when the inventory opens. Now it's important to remember here that the UI does not enforce the player to keep this filter set. So if you are using this in a real game, when you get an item back from this event, you should check that the item is valid for whatever you're doing with it. So if, for example, we set the categories here to be only weapons, then you should make sure that whatever they pick is valid as a weapon for your game, however that is. If you select only polygon in the blockchain, then you should make sure that whatever they select is a polygon asset. In the future, we are almost certainly going to rework how this works. When we do rework this, we will likely be looking for community feedback, so if you do have any feedback on this, please let us know. There will likely be more filter categories. It won't just be 4 hard-coded ones, they will probably be like a hierarchy of categories. So you'll have like weapons, and then you'll have like melee weapons, and then you'll have one-handed swords and two-handed swords, etc. So we're going to probably rework a lot of this. However, for now, if you're building with it in this version, you will need to be aware of these things. Another thing is you can use, you can set the search. So say we want to only show things with the name testing in, then we can do that. So we're only finding things with testing in the name that are in the weapons category on the blockchain polygon. There should be something there, I think, in my inventory. So when this is completed, and take into account that the completion happens when the inventory is closed or when there was a selection error. A selection error can be either the user wasn't connected to their wallet, so they couldn't open the overlay. The user switched away from the inventory screen, which we don't prevent them from doing when they're in this. The user closed the overlay, which we don't prevent them from doing, but it will throw an error. And you didn't plug a player controller in, which is, you should just make sure that you do, so you don't get this error. OK means everything went OK, and you should have a valid item coming out this end. So what you can do, of course, is you can plug that into a branch like so, and now you always know that you're going to be getting valid items. You should probably handle the error if it doesn't return OK. So now, drag off of true here, and we can do a print, and we can get the selected item and we can break it. And interestingly, this gives you an Emergence combined inventory item. This is mainly a feature that's more useful for us when we're developing the overlay, but you can make use of it if you really want to. So if you drag off of inventory item, you can break this into one that looks like what we had before. In fact, it's identical to what we had before, coming off of inventory by owner, but this is just coming off of here. And what we're going to do is, just for simplicity here, we're just going to get the name and we're going to print it. So now if we press compile and save, press play, make sure to log in with Wallet Connect, otherwise it will obviously throw that error, and press escape, press N, and as you can see, it will show the inventory. Here you can see it's already put in testing, it's checked the weapons box, and we're on the blockchain polygon. Now obviously I can just remove testing and you can see the other polygon weapon that I have, or I can turn on all the categories and you can see all the polygon things I have, or you can select any and you can see all of the items from all of the blockchains we support. But let's go back to what it was before. So polygon, weapons, testing. Now, if I click on testing, you can see, amongst other data, it does give us the name. So now we've got that, you can also get any of the other data to do with that inventory item. This is an example of how I've used this so far. So I found this really useful whilst we were building out an example for our game, The Lab, where I was building a jukebox that allows players to play any of the music that they own on the blockchain. So this allows me to just easily pop open an inventory, easily show the user all of the things that they see on a site like OpenSea, but they can select what they want to pass back to the game as the input to the jukebox, for example. So next up, let's look at how we can write to dynamic metadata. So earlier we built this example with the NFT picker. You can see if we do a drop down here on break emergence inventory item meta, you can see you can get to the dynamic metadata here. It's just a string, like any other string, but to actually set the dynamic metadata, you need to call a special method, which is called write dynamic metadata. In here you have to enter what the network of the NFT you're writing the dynamic metadata to is, the contract address, the token ID, and the metadata you want to actually write. You also need this authorization header, which currently is always the same. You can copy it off the screen now, or you can copy it from the inventory service how to read and write dynamic metadata example in our docs. But yeah, you can see it on the screen now. So you just need to paste that in there. In the future this might be different, but that's how it is currently. So to write this dynamic metadata, what we're going to do is we're going to plug blockchain into network, we're going to plug contract into contract, we're going to plug token ID into token ID, and we can just set the dynamic metadata to whatever we want. So let's say hello world, and we'll use the NFT picker example here. So we'll just plug it straight into write dynamic metadata. You can check that it's actually happened by doing print string and printing the response code, and also printing the response itself, like so. If we load into the game, we log in with Wallet Connect, so we can use the NFT picker. So now I've logged in, can press escape, press N, which will open up the NFT picker, and this will allow me to select which of the NFTs I want to write the dynamic metadata to. So I'm just going to select one. Let's write to this one called Movie Dino. I think it was just one that was sent to me randomly on OpenSea. So now you can see here we have the response, Emergence OK, and Hello World, which is what we wrote. Now if I go to my collection and I click on it, you can see dynamic metadata : hello world. Now I'm sure you can imagine a lot of reasons how this could be useful. It's especially useful, we think, for adding information to NFTs which are not inherently supported by the smart contract. Like for example, this is how we've made our categorization system. So if I click on this sword, you can see that it has a number of different pieces of dynamic metadata attached to it. It has categories, weapon, and one-handed sword. Now currently one-handed sword isn't implemented as a category in the UI, but weapon is, so that's why it shows up as a weapon. It also has some other data, including scale, rotation, and location data, which allows me to better position it on a character. That's not something that we are necessarily offering as a hard and set rule on what dynamic metadata is yet. There really aren't many. The only thing we currently say is if you do put a categories array in, the UI will read that for the 4 that exist currently, but obviously this is very, very subject to change. It's sort of offered here as an example of what this could be in the future. So that's how you can write your dynamic metadata. And as I said earlier, if you just want to read the dynamic metadata, that's a lot easier. Just whenever you get a emergence inventory item, you can get its meta data and then read the string off as dynamic metadata, and that will be whatever you've set it to. Take into account that dynamic metadata is global, so everyone can read and write the same piece of metadata. Again, this might be something that we change in the future. In the future, it may be that not everyone writes into the same string. It might be that everyone has their own string, and it's very, 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 very subject to change. Thank you for watching this tutorial on the inventory system in Emergence. I look forward to seeing how you guys make use of it in your games. We will have more tutorials coming in the future for our more advanced systems, so make sure to hit the subscribe button so you're notified for whenever we release a new video. So thanks for watching.